as we move on to chapter 19, so our two previous videos were covering chapter 12. Now we're going to talk about chapter 19, which is really about reputation management. So chapter 18 was really focused on contributions to the community by the business, financially, economically, and this is really about reputation management and what the public thinks of us. And so thinking about the general public is that the general public is anyone who really is impacted by the company, who might form opinions of the company, who might think different things about the company. And we might have our own networks, and we might lobby against companies, for example. So like I gave an example of a pipeline company trying to come in, and if you drive across the state of Iowa, you'll see no carbon pipelines. We're against carbon pipelines. There has been a lot of general public lobbying against bringing those companies and that business into the state of Iowa. We might call for a boycott of a company, so the public is upset with the company, or we might sue a company for different actions. For example, Panera Bread was recently sued. They were in the middle of a lawsuit because they had two people that died from consuming their energy drinks. And so thinking about different activities that the general public and our stakeholders for organizations might be involved in, especially when we're talking about reputation management. Okay, the general media. So we have media outlets, newspapers, TV programs, news stations, news broadcasts, and then we also have social media. And companies need to think about how that information gets spread, what kind of information is being spread about them, and they can try to, one, they want to establish a good reputation. And then if something has happened to damage their reputation, they might use the media and social media to try to engage with stakeholders to repair that image so that people think more positively about us. We can also manage public relations. So this would be things like if we do have a volunteer day with Habitat for Humanity, maybe we post or put out a press release about it and hope that local businesses champion us. Or I posted an article about Taco John's in Canvas. That's a very recent article I just saw posted on Facebook yesterday by a local news station, because I follow all the local news stations on Facebook, so I see local news and what gets championed. And so this is something where Taco John's has put out a press release and local news stations have picked it up and shared it. Now I've seen that kind of go viral, actually, because I've seen it on multiple social media now and shared by a lot of different people. Okay, what is our corporate reputation? It's really, what do people think about us? Do they see us as a positive kind of corporation? Do they see us as a negative corporation? For example, Nestle. A lot of people see Nestle as a very negative corporation. They do not have a good reputation for community engagement. They have a reputation for stealing water, and they have a reputation for exploiting farmers. And so that negative reputation. You might have a good reputation because you really interact. One of the companies with the best reputation, for example, is Patagonia. And we've seen an article about Patagonia and some stuff that why they have such a good reputation and good reputation management. Or we have companies that might have really good reputations for years and then have something happen like Volkswagen did that gives them a negative perception. And then we also have corporate identity. So, how do we present ourselves to an audience? We might embrace that. For example, Chick-fil-A and Hobby Lobby are Christian organizations, and they present themselves as very religious Christian organizations. And so that is the identity and part of the identity of their business that they hope resonates with customers. And then we have other companies that have taken kind of opposite stances, where you think about Raygun. Raygun as a corporation really calls out the government. They post t-shirts calling out not unpopular kind of government opinions, government regulations. They also publish t-shirts about local sports and different things like that, but they try to that's their corporate identity, and not everybody supports that kind of identity. Or Penzeys Spices. If you haven't ever heard of Penzeys Spices, this is a spice company. They are a little bit more prevalent in larger cities. There is one Penzeys store in Iowa. It's in West Des Moines. But they have a large online shopping presence also. But in the last 10 years, they've been very negative about the Republican Party, to the point that every single advertising email they have, every single time they have a sale, it's their sale is talking about why they hate the Republican Party. They have a spot on their website like, why are Republicans bad? That's on their spice. And this company sells kitchen spices, but this is what they've chosen as part of their corporate identity. Now, you can be for or against corporations getting politically involved, but you have to think about how that embraces their identity. Nike also, by signing Colin Kaepernick, there were a lot of people who called for boycotts of Nike, but they very loudly were stating what their position was. Another kind of corporate identity or image they had was when we had reputational fallout with Bud Light. When they signed a transgender influencer, they created a marketing contract with a transgender influencer. They created pride cans with the transgender influencer's face on them. Many Bud Light customers were very upset about this. They didn't think that represented what they thought Bud Light was as a brand. They didn't support Bud Light doing this. And so Bud Light severed the marketing contract. The day after Bud Light severed the marketing contract with this transgender influencer, Nike signed them for millions of dollars and said, we're going to support this, and we support this even though Bud Light no longer is, because of backlash from the public. So you can see all of these different ways and how like corporate reputation, corporate identity, kind of all involve from public, and how the public talks about you, how the public influences your decisions, different things like that. And even when we have positive reputation, how we can tarnish it like Volkswagen did, or Hobby Lobby is another example. So we have Hobby Lobby, who touts very, very loudly that they are a Christian-owned company, that they follow Christian values, that they're very supportive of Christians. In fact, the owners of Hobby Lobby built a museum of the Bible. However, in part of that building, in trying to find things to keep in that museum, they were found guilty of smuggling stolen goods. They were using the Hobby Lobby business and Hobby Lobby shipments to smuggle stolen goods into the United States to populate this museum of the Bible. They were fined. They had to return all of the stolen goods to the countries that they were stolen from, and they had a reputation management issue. And if I'm a good Christian company who says that I'm following the Bible and I'm following, and then I'm stealing and engaging in illegal activity, what does that say about my Christian values? So kind of this reputation management that also had to happen from that. So those are just a few examples of different. So when we have reputation issues, then we get into what's called a crisis, and we have to think about crisis management. And there are multiple different kinds of crisis management or corporate crises. So we have a list here, such as like acts of God, where maybe there's a tornado and one of our warehouses gets hit. This has happened in the South a couple of times where a warehouse has been hit. People might get injured, somebody dies, and then we have to talk about, you know, how we do that. Mechanical problems, so breakdowns of or faulty equipment, fatigue, and even human errors through miscommunication and improper behavior. So these examples would be like the oil spill in the Gulf of Mexico several years ago by BP Oil. This was a combination of like mechanical problems and human error. And mechanical problems the company knew about but didn't fix. Same thing with McDonald's. You've probably heard about that case where a woman sued McDonald's for having hot coffee. And a lot of the times this lawsuit is laughed about and how ridiculous this is and how ridiculous this woman is. Well, the issue is this woman got third-degree burns from the McDonald's coffee, and this McDonald's had been cited multiple times by food inspectors for carrying their coffee at a higher temperature than coffee should be kept at. So McDonald's really was at fault. It was a decision they had made, because if you keep coffee at a really high temperature, you can hold it for longer without having to make fresh coffee. But it violates food safety rules and standards. Okay, and so that's kind of this management decision or indecision, whether you're going to cover it up or just do it for different reasons, but employee behavior and stuff like that. Volkswagen would also be a symbol of that employee behavior and management decision to cover things up. Maybe even poor financial performance. So we're trying to recover from the fact that we're losing money, and we're trying to create customer loyalty and customer confidence. Of course, backlash against stance on controversial social or political issues. I've given several examples about this. You know, Target ending DEI and having sales losses. Bud Light having backlash, boycotting things. Nike, when they signed Colin Kaepernick, received a lot of backlash, boycotts. Another famous one would be in 2020, Carhartt requiring all of their employees be vaccinated with the COVID vaccine. Then there are videos online of people burning their Carhartt stuff, calling for boycotts of Carhartt. And then we have terrorism or other acts of violence against the company. And really this kind of depends on the company and what the company makes, where like a defense contractor is more likely to be a victim of terrorism or an act of violence than say a retail store. Okay, so that are chapters 18 and 19 in a nutshell. I encourage you, of course, to look at some of the different readings. One of the other readings that I posted was about the Vikings Stadium and the Minnesota Vikings threatening to leave the state of Minnesota if the state of Minnesota didn't fully fund a new stadium for them. You can find a lot of articles about this. I just posted kind of one about what is that requirement for a public-private partnership. Like, should the state where the football team is be responsible for building the football team stadium? And what is the leverage there? Is there really a community benefit from that partnership? So a lot of different things to think about this week.